One, two, three, four, five.
Top 5 Gaming Podcast, Episode 5. I'm your host, Austin, and with me, like usual, is our cohort, Casey. How you doing, Casey?
Let me ask you a question.
Let me answer a question, Casey.
If you could be any fucking race from Zelda, what would it be?
Jeez, okay. Throwing a curveball out of left field here.
Also, I'm doing fine. I just recently touched my knee.
Yeah, well, I've been liking kayaking lately and going in rivers and stuff and fishing, so it'd probably be Zora.
Goron people. That's the correct answer, yes.
Yeah. I do wish to roll as a ball.
Also, no, that's the incorrect answer because Zora people is clearly the correct answer.
Oh, well, I'm glad I got it right the first time.
Yes, but you copied my answer.
Oh, sorry. I cheated. Hey, so everybody, we're doing a Zelda-themed podcast. The next one will be Zelda-themed as well. There's a video game coming out, Breath of the Wild. It's getting really good reviews, and we're super-duper excited to play it, or at least I am.
Yeah, I was about to say, stop putting words into my mouth because they taste salty.
So the theme for this podcast today is our top 5 Zelda items and top 5 Zelda dungeons. How do you want to do this, Casey?
Hang on one second. Did we mention that it's like a Zelda month?
Yeah, we're going to do another podcast with Zelda stuff.
Woo!
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
I've been letting you go first lately, so I'm going to go first this time, if that's okay with you.
just one thing?
Yeah.
I bet I know 2 of your top items, and I bet I know none of your top dungeons.
I know you know one of my top items, and I'd be surprised if you didn't know some of my top dungeons.
Do you know any of mine?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think we might have one overlapping item.
I have a feeling so too.
Okay, cool. So, my number 5 item is the bunny mask. It appears in multiple games, but it's...
Was it?
Yeah. It was in Ocarina of Time. It was like the first mask that you get, and you can trade it away.
Me, you're right.
And apparently, I was just reading that it's like it has a cameo in Wind Waker, in like one of the shops or something like that.
I could totally see that.
Yeah, it's only really functional in Majora, and it makes you run faster. And I just used it constantly. It was like the saving grace of my time run. Like, I didn't have a time. Well, like, I only played Majora's Mask once, and I didn't run out of time. And it's a time-dependent game. Like, you can spend too much time in the game, and then it'll just...
You have 3 in-game days to do something. If you don't do it efficiently enough, you run out of time, and you have to start from day 1 all over again.
Yeah, and like the moon crashes into the earth, and it's horrible.
The moon comes crashing into the planet.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just like things that make things more efficient. I feel like a lot of the times in Zelda games, I'm just waiting for shit to happen, and the bunny mask was just, it made me feel good that I could be more efficient.
I bet you love the Goron mask, then.
I kept fucking that up. I mean, like, I would use the Goron mask to get fast if, like, there was a straight path or something, but I'd usually just run into stuff or just fall off of whatever platform I was on. So the bunny mask was my go-to.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but that's my number 5 item. Casey, what's your number 5 item?
My number 5, and you know what's funny? I was telling you this before. I had the absolute hardest time coming up with number 5s for both of these lists. And I have no fucking idea why.
What'd you settle on?
I settled on the Mirror Shield.
Oh, nice.
Yes, first appeared in I don't know which one, but it was also in Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time and The Wind Waker.
Yeah.
And maybe others. I don't care.
Yeah, what'd you like about this item?
Well, just to let everyone know, the Mirror Shield, since I'm sure you all know, is a shield that absorbs and redirects light and certain projectiles. And what I liked about that was that it essentially gave you a reason to use a shield outside of just a blocking implement.
Yeah.
Allowed you to sort of, block but aim your block a certain way so that light would like bounce off so you could hit certain targets or something.
Yeah, I thought that was a great item.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's it's often one of the few items found in a dungeon that's not for offensive properties.
Yeah.
Like usually it's like you'll find the bombs or the arrows, the boomerang, stuff that you can hurt an enemy with.
Yeah.
Mirror Shield is straight up just like a more problem-solving kind of item.
Yeah, and I guess there was a whole bunch of like light puzzles in a bunch of those games, and
Yeah.
I looked this item up, and you're right, it was in a whole bunch of games. It was also in like some early games, like I think it was in Link's Awakening.
Yeah, I know that I know that it didn't debut with Ocarina of Time. I just was too lazy to look up when it debuted.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to just see how it was implemented in 2D space. It was also in what's that 2D one that we both played on? Like it was on the original DS or whatever. And you'd use the stylus to move around. Oh, Phantom Hourglass.
Oh, Phantom Out. It was? I don't remember. It's been too
Or
long.
or maybe it wasn't. I could be lying to everybody. Never listen to me.
Hey guys, do you think that we do our research often enough? Like, comment, subscribe.
Wonderful. Yeah, is that about it for your Mirror Shield commentary?
Well, I just want to say, I also like how it's used in quite a few of the boss fights that require it. Because you remember like the two witch sisters that you fought in Ocarina of Time, how you had to reflect their elemental attacks at each other.
Yeah, I do remember that. That was a
And
great
then
boss fight.
yeah, and then in Majora's Mask, you could use it to redirect light at these skeleton warriors you had to fight at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all really cool. The only reason why it doesn't make it higher on the list is that usually aiming with the fucking thing is really finicky. And honestly, outside of just aiming light at a thing, it's kind of wasted as a puzzle mechanic most of the time.
Yeah. Sometimes there are like little hidden areas where you could get like a small chest that gave you rupees if you found this one spot to put the mirror shield light on.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever, which
absolutely.
was
But
always
it's a
pretty
shame
cool.
that there's not more like redirecting puzzles or something like that, or more intricate
Yeah,
light direction.
yeah, they could do more with it.
Or being able to like store and release fire and ice like you could in that one boss fight.
Yeah. So my number 4 item would be the spinning cog from Twilight Princess.
Serious?
Yeah, the spinner or whatever. And it made my list mostly because it was really memorable. So it was just really a cool looking way to traverse the world. So you had like these little cog rails that you could go on where they were on the walls or whatever. And all of a sudden the game got really fast, you know?
Yeah.
You could also skate along some surfaces like I think you could skate along sand and like ice or something like that.
Yeah, you could use the spinner to traverse sand without slowing down.
Yeah, and there was also like you could attack with it or something. Like you could jump on people, is that right? Or jump at people?
You could kind of Beyblade them, where you could like run into them and then press a button at a certain time to like do a quick little like super spin that hurt.
Yeah, yeah. I just thought it was a neat item. It's not something that you'd really think of, and it took some. I don't know. It took some thought to think of. It could have been implemented more. It didn't have like a whole lot of purpose.
I was about to say that's my like. I kind of think it's. I don't want to say it's a stupid item, but it's just a shame that it's kind of. It's so it feels so wasted.
Yeah, kind of one and done. But I don't know. It was just really memorable. That's really why it's on my list.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah. Casey, number
Yes.
4 item.
My number 4 is just to get a little bit more unconventional here. The spinner cog from Twilight Princess.
I thought that it was going to be on your list, and then when you were like, "Oh wow, I'm surprised us." God damn it, Casey.
I wonder if people would get sick of how many times I just try and be. We be deceitful a lot on these lists.
Well, I think. Well, yeah. I was going to say you've been deceitful, but
No,
was
but
last
like the
time.
Star Fox thing last
Yeah.
time was.
Yep. I can't. I can't say that I'm pure in this sense.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that you said. It's really memorable. It's really unorthodox as an item.
Yeah.
It's once again another one of those items that's not exactly for offensive purposes as much as just like traveling purposes.
Mm-hmm.
I like how much it opened up the exploration a bit because I mean, yeah, those tracks were kind of limited to that one dungeon, but just the concept of like being able to ride rails essentially to like get to different heights and just move through like gaps and bridges and shit was a really cool concept.
Yeah. Weren't there like a bunch of, now that I'm thinking about it, weren't there like some of those rails in the overworld, like the hub
Oh
world?
yeah,
or
there
whatever?
totally were. There just weren't a lot.
Yeah, they were like kind of hidden around, and then you can go up into the mountains or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame because You know how like the paraglider thing that's coming to Breath of the Wild is supposed to be like an integral part of the game?
Okay, yeah.
I feel like the spinner could have been an integral part of the game that they introduced early on had they like thought more about like how you could use that to travel the world more.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But it
agree.
almost yeah, but it almost feels more like sort of a late game addition because it's just so confined to that one area.
Yeah.
But the only other thing I want to say, I especially like how it wasn't just for navigation. There was a challenge to using the spinner
Mm-hmm.
because
It gave you different properties.
well, that like you had to time jumps between different railings, and you would like occasionally have to dodge incoming projectiles by jumping to a different railing or something.
Yeah.
It's almost like an extreme sports kind of feeling, just like jumping between rails, dodging things, all that.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of, I guess it's sort of like those Sonic levels in 3D Sonic games where you can go in between rails or whatever.
Yeah, I love
It's
that
like a
shit.
totally different type of gameplay superimposed in Zelda.
Yeah, it's just a shame it couldn't get more love.
Yeah. Well, Casey, here's our second overlap. My number three is the mirror shield.
Oh well.
And I agree with everything that you were saying. I think that it gives a new level of function to the shield. So it's not like you have to put it in your C buttons on the N64 or anything. It's just
Yeah, that's true.
it's
That's true.
already part of your kit that you're using. It's just an upgraded version. The light puzzles, that was kind of neat that you could do that. There were like some enemies that you can destroy, like those floor masters or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, I
so that
remember
was
that.
pretty cool. And one thing that you didn't mention that I would mention, or you took all my talking points, Casey. So I hate you for that. But
No worries, buddy.
you did have one more example of the use for the mirror shield. So basically, the end boss in Wind Waker, you're fighting with Zelda against Ganon, and then you have to use the mirror shield to
Oh, I forgot about
to
that. That's
bounce
awesome.
that light arrow because
Yeah.
Ganon starts like deflecting them or whatever. So then you have to. Yeah, I don't know. It was a really cool moment, and it took me a little while to figure out what to do. But then as soon as I figured it out, I was like, oh, that was fucking cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was a neat
Dude,
part of the mirror shield.
real talk?
Yes.
Has your underbelly ever itched?
No, I can't say it's ever itched.
Because mine is.
Oh, you should
And
go
it's
get
one
that
of those
checked out.
itches that's too vague to find where to scratch.
Great. I learn new things every day.
No, you don't.
Let me
Anyway,
learn a new thing by having you tell me what your number two item is.
number three, thank you.
Okay, number three. I was gonna
Get with
skip
it,
one.
dude. Okay, and you know what? This is where I'm interested because I'm going to take this as a bit of a challenge because I know for a fact that you don't know what this item is
Great.
because you've never played the game far enough to like experience it.
Tell me about it.
My number three is called the Sand Rod, and it originated in Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks for the
Oh.
DS.
Yeah, fuck that game. But tell me
Oh
why
yeah,
this
I agree
item's good.
entirely. No, I mean I do like Spirit Tracks more than Phantom Hourglass, but frankly they can both fuck off.
Really? Ooh, wow. Okay.
Dude, Phantom Hourglass is crap, especially that fucking central time temple or whatever that you have to keep going
Yeah,
back.
I didn't like that.
No, but anyway. So the Sand Rod, it's an item you get. I think it's one of the last items you get in one of the last dungeons. What it allows you to do is it allows you to raise sand and turn it into columns that can be walked upon. So you could be like standing on just sand flooring, use the rod, and it raises you up onto like a little block of sand.
That's
Sort of
pretty
like what
neat.
that new ice ability thing is for Breath of the Wild.
Okay, I don't even know what that ice ability is, so I'm excited for that too.
You and I saw it.
Oh well, I already forgot. I have like
That's
a very selective memory.
that's very true. In any event, the sand rod allows you to raise sand into blocks. And what was cool about that was that it was honestly really excellently used for puzzle solving. Like you could raise sand to like guide boulders forward and navigate them. You could create stepping stones to walk on, and you could even use them as shields to block projectiles.
Yeah, I love it when items like that have like a bunch of different uses.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the boss fight in the dungeon that you acquire that rod is especially clever because not only does it require you to use the sand rod to create create multiple columns of sand to like slow down a boulder so that it stops and doesn't hit you.
Yeah.
You then have to use the sand rod to make sand columns that push the boulder toward a catapult that you then launch at an enemy.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, and then at the very end of that, you use the sand rod to trap the enemy in sand that gives you a chance to hit him.
That's pretty impressive, Nintendo. If only you
Yeah.
could have made that game better so that I could got to that point.
Today's definition of a backhanded compliment or a front-handed insult.
Yeah, I just can't deal with those trains for so long.
No, I get it. The one other thing about the sand rod is it's one of the few items that I think works really well with touch control.
Okay.
Because all you do is push down the stylus, and wherever you're pointing is where the sand rod makes sand lift up.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, like if it was in another 3D Zelda game, you'd have to, manually go into like a first person mode, like when you use a bow or whatever. So I don't know. That'd be less intuitive than just hitting something on the stylus with the
Yeah,
stylus.
and because you have to like guide boulders really quickly for like that boss fight, it makes sense that you like it's a one-to-one motion with your drawing.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, the reason why it's number 3 is because it was also featured in A Link Between Worlds,
Okay.
and it's nowhere near as fun because they did away with stylus controls in that game. So all you do is aim and you create a line of sand columns.
Oh, that's too bad. Because they
Yeah.
could have done the same thing.
Yeah, and just to let everybody know, I try and like with the mirror shield and the sand rod, I try and think of the items as they've been used universally throughout the Zelda franchise before I like decide if it's one of my favorites or not. Because I mean, like the iron boots, for example, is one of my honorable mentions, but I only like it in Twilight Princess. So
Yeah. Well, my number 2 best item is the leaf from Wind Waker. And
oh my God.
Yeah, I mentioned this in the last podcast.
Oh man,
we
this
have,
is
we have
this
a
is
bunch
a
of overlap,
surprising
don't
one
we?
for me. This is a surprising one for me, and I disagree with its placement.
All right. So the leaf from Wind Waker. The coolest part about this item was that you could glide.
Yep.
You jump off of platforms, and then you catch some wind or whatever and go up. And I just like when you have different traversal in these games because like you can't jump, and it always feels so limited. So whenever I get to do something cool, it really stands out.
Well, you know how memorable the leaf is, because Breath of the Wild pretty much just features a leaf-like item right at the start.
Yeah. And then there's other stuff you can do with it, like fan things or whatever. You can send out little airwaves. You can
Like,
get rid of poison smoke, and there's a whole bunch of like windmill mechanisms around
yes.
in the world, with like platforms, and you can fix some puzzles with it. And then one other thing that you could do is use it as like this makeshift sail thing. So there are certain points in that game where you're on a platform and you can move the platform by pushing air in the opposite direction that you want to go. And
Yep.
I'll send you in a certain direction. I don't know. It was a cool item. You could also like fight stuff with it.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, like there would be like fire bats coming down, and you could take out the fire or something, and the skull things. And there were some other interactions where you can make other characters flinch, and I'm sure I'm forgetting plenty of other stuff that you could do with it because I don't know. It was just a great item.
One of the most memorable parts of that for me, and I don't know if you encountered this in Wind Waker, was there was an island where you could essentially play mini golf with the leaf.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah,
Not,
I do
not
remember
that I
that.
remember that being particularly fun, but it was neat.
Yeah, and then there's like a platform in the middle of the ocean that you could go to, and then see how far you could go with the leaf or whatever. There'd be a whole bunch of like little air geysers coming out of the ground, and you try and
Oh
reach them
yeah,
and
I
get as far
remember
as you
that.
can.
Oh, that was so fun, like being skillful enough to like grab onto an air pocket at the right time.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty cool. It's kind of like Pilot Wings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Fuck that glider.
Yeah. Well, that's it for my number 2. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is the hook shot.
Ooh, okay. That's featured in a lot of different games.
Indeed, I know. I think it's almost every single one.
Yeah.
Uh,
Like
and
at least
I
the
am-
3D
I'm-
ones, right?
Yeah, at least the 3D ones. Probably won't be in Breath of the Wild, and it was in a few of the 2D ones. I know.
Okay. I didn't. Which 2D ones can you remember it being in?
It's in Link to the Past.
Okay.
Pretty sure it's in Link Between Worlds. I know it's in at least one of the Wind Waker spin-off games for the DS.
Okay. All right. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, and I mean, as indicated with stuff like the spinner, I love items that kind of open up your exploration option, or like, let me restart that sentence.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just remembering now that I do remember it being in Phantom Hourglass.
Okay, yeah,
I'd forgotten
I had
about
a
that.
feeling it was.
Yeah.
But anyway, like with the spinner, I like items that kind of open up your options for exploration, like how you can actually travel through a world and whatnot.
Yeah.
And the hookshot is like the poster child for that because it always opens up exploration opportunities. It gives you more verticality, allows you to travel greater distances over gaps and all that shit.
Yeah, and it really encourages you to look around for anything that you can attach the hook to so you can get to a certain area.
It's also occasionally a handy weapon. You can use it to pretty much one-shot bats and smaller enemies and shit if you're out of arrows or whatever.
Yeah, and there were like some armored enemies that you can grab their armor off of them.
Yes, in Twilight Princess there were these little rhino fucks that you could grapple their little shells off and then throw it at them.
And
But
earlier in that like dungeon or something like that, they're much more of a nuisance before you get that hook shot.
yes, very true.
Yeah.
I also like how the grappling hook is used for grabbing items because you can use it to grab heart pieces. I think sometimes.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Now I will say the hook shot by itself probably would not have made the list were it not for what was done with it in Twilight Princess.
I can't
Because
even remember what was that, Casey.
and for technicality's sake, in Twilight Princess it's called like the claw shot, but it's the fucking hook shot. It works the same fucking way.
Yeah.
But in Twilight Princess, one of the last items you get is called the double claw shot, which allowed you to use two claw shots at once. So you could latch onto a wall with your first claw shot, and then from that wall latch onto another wall with the second one.
Oh, okay, so you wouldn't ever have to touch the ground for a little while.
Yeah, like that. And I really like that because it made for really like versatile wall scaling and exploring. Like suddenly you could just be jumping between pillars or like climbing a tower just by grappling rather than grapple and let go and then walk around.
Yeah. Really opens up on the verticality.
Yeah, it really gave a greater sense of freedom. And I really liked when the double claw shot was used for like high stress environments. There's this one part where you have to grapple onto columns that start to fall down into nothingness. So you have to be quick and like grapple between column to column.
Yeah.
I really found that fun. The reason why the hook shot or claw shot, whatever, doesn't make it higher up on the list is because using it is always a little too slow for me. Like it always feels a bit clunky to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that any of the... Well, yeah, it's hard to say that any of the 3D Zelda games had really good control schemes for first-person mode. Like, I don't know.
The Wii one probably came the closest. Well, the Wii port, whatever.
Yeah.
Just because it was, the pointing reticule.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Is that it for your number 2?
Yes. Continue.
All right, my number 1, KC. You probably guessed this. The Ocarina from Ocarina of Time.
Nope, didn't even think about that.
Really? Oh,
Truth be
wow.
told, I thought your number 1 was going to be the Leaf.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you're awfully close. So, I mean, I guess it isn't that obvious because it's like the staple of the game.
I mean, it is an item.
Yeah.
I never... Oh, wait. Oh, fuck, you already listed your number 1. I was going to ask if you had any honorable mentions.
My only honorable mention that I'll have to say is the Dominion Rod from Twilight Princess.
Wow, that is an unpopular opinion.
Yeah, there's something similar that happens in Wind Waker.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I don't remember what that item was called, but I like having to like go through. Like it was kind of how the dungeon worked. It was kind of like you went through the dungeon and then you had to backtrack back the dungeon, no, backwards. But everything was, it had a secondary purpose now that you had the Dominion Rod, and you had to, I didn't even explain what the Dominion Rod does.
It allows you to control statues.
Yeah, so you control statues and they'll do different things, and there's different kinds of statues you can use or whatever. And then, you have to control the statues to go backwards and complete like these puzzles.
Yeah, it did make for some good puzzle navigation because you had to like guide it from one side of the room to the other.
Yeah, and it didn't get too old because the item was only used right then, I believe.
It did have overworld applications, but frankly, they were as interesting as most of the overworld applications for Twilight Princess.
Yeah. So I just thought that it was a neat thing. And then I think its use in Wind Waker was not quite as good because I felt
Yeah.
like it was more time wasty. But I don't know.
Okay, so your number one. What's your
Yeah.
number one?
Number one, Ocarina from the Ocarina of Time.
Oh wow, I didn't. Oh wow, I didn't even think about that.
God damn it, Casey. So this item, I mean, like it's everybody probably knows it, but it's super crazy versatile because you get all these different songs. Okay, so the ocarina, you'll press a button and then you start playing the ocarina, and different combinations of notes will get you different results. So some of them might teleport you to a certain area. It might change the environment, like it might change the time of day, or
Or it might make it rain.
yeah, you might make it rain or something like that. You can summon Epona, your horse. And like I thought that the cool thing was that so I'm a musician like by trade, but anybody even like non-musicians can use it because they give you like the formulas for these different songs in your inventory. But it was kind of cool if you could just memorize them and play them in time or whatever. And then, so just a little bit of background on the thing. So the notes that you could play on the ocarina make a pentatonic scale, which
Holy
is
shit!
yeah, it's like this 5-note scale that's really popular in a whole bunch of music. And so there's a whole bunch of different tunes you can play with the pentatonic scale. I don't know. It was just cool to just mess around with.
Dude, I really have to apologize to you.
Yeah.
I thought you were about to go into depth about how like the notes corresponded to which like button on the controller. Instead, you just went like straight up musical expertise on me.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who like picks up an instrument, like pretty much every single pop tune is made out of pentatonic scales. So it's a like a
Are you,
really foundational thing. But
are you a psychic hooker? Because you're blowing my mind.
yeah, and because of its design and how the songs worked in the game, like all of the song or most of the songs from Ocarina of Time, like the actual music of the game, is in that same scale that you can play with the ocarina. So I don't know. It was just really, really well designed musically.
That's really cool. You know, it's weird. I mean, I do agree that the ocarina is a great item. I what?
Yeah, I'm just waiting.
Oh, I was just gonna say I think I would prefer its use more in Majora's Mask than from Ocarina of Time, though.
What I don't even remember what you do with it in Majora's Mask.
Well, I mean, it does all the things that you were saying. It changes the environment, and you can play certain songs to have different effects on people or whatever.
Okay.
But its core component is that it allows you to travel back through time.
Oh yeah, and that's the one of the main components of the game.
Yeah, and I especially like that more in Majora's Mask because in Ocarina of Time, you don't really travel back in time or forward in time with the ocarina. You do it by touching or putting back the Master Sword.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Majora's Mask, the Ocarina of Time actually does what its fucking namesake is supposed to do, and send you back in time or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose that I like the ocarina in both those games. Then.
Well, fair. I mean, it's the same ocarina.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Casey, what's your number one?
My number one. God damn it, Austin! Just to let people know, some of my honorable mentions
What's your honorable mentions, Casey?
the Goron mask from Majora's Mask, simply because it actually allowed you to move at a half decent speed.
Yeah.
The hammer from multiple Zelda games, just because it has good game feel.
Yeah, it is cool because it like makes the screen shake and shit.
Yeah. The beetle from Skyward Sword, just because it was like a remote control RC car that you could fly, also known as an RC helicopter.
I didn't get that far in that game.
You
Maybe I'll
didn't.
play it one
No.
day.
Also, do you like how I just said it's like an RC car that you can fly, also known as an RC helicopter?
Nice.
And last but not least, the Zora suit, specifically from Twilight Princess. Just because it allowed you to swim really efficiently, it looked cool, and it was a rare example of a suit that actually looks really different from the others.
Nice. Give us that sweet, sweet number one, Casey.
Number one is the Leaf from Wind Waker.
Ooh.
And congratulations, motherfucker. You got revenge on me for taking all your Mirror Shield points because you pretty much pointed out everything that I had.
Did I take the wind out of your sails, Casey?
I really hope that my microphone doesn't correct for this. Fuck you! The only thing I do want to say is that of all of the items that we've mentioned, and part of the reason why the leaf makes it so high up on my list,
Yes.
it's probably one of the most frequently used items outside of dungeons.
Yeah, just traversal wise, it is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And I mean that's always been one of people's biggest complaints is that a lot of items are kind of one and done once you are done with the dungeon, but the leaf was a very ubiquitous feature of Wind Waker, I feel.
Yeah. Well, you've made me predict that we're gonna have at least one dungeon overlap.
Oh god, and yeah, I can already predict that too, but you don't know what position.
I don't. So, Casey, you want me to get started with the dungeons?
Can I ask you one question first?
I'll answer one question.
Just off the top of your head, can you think of any items that you really fucking hate from Zelda?
Really fucking hate. I don't think I really fucking hate anything, or that's coming to my head immediately.
You don't fucking hate the Deku nuts?
No, I fucking love those. I just wish that they had more application later in the game.
That's why I hate them, because they're barely useful at the start, and then they're just completely thrown away.
Yeah. Like there's just like random applications later in the game where it'll help you fight like some of those in Ocarina of Time, those like lizard people. I think that you can you, or do they just flinch, or do they actually get stunned? No, they just flinch. I'm lying to everybody again. Yeah, I do wish that they had more application later in the game.
You don't hate the slingshot?
No, it's fine.
Fuck the slingshot.
It's just like a baby bow.
It was good in Ocarina of Time because that was all that young Link could use. But in every other one, it's like, oh, you get the slingshot, but like 5 minutes later,
You'll get
a
bow
bow and arrow that pretty much just says "fuck you" to the slingshot.
Yeah, it makes the slingshot really antiquated.
Yeah.
That is a good point, Casey. I wish that, I don't know, that they'd give it another use other than just to hit things so that you could solve puzzles.
Yeah, they should make the slingshot so that you throw it, and then it comes back to you after it goes in like a swinging, sweeping arc.
Or they could give it different ammo later in the game or something like that.
Wow, I like how you actually had a constructive idea, and mine was just a stupid joke. That's how we go in this.
Oh, yeah. Alright, do you want me to get started with the dungeons?
I don't care.
Alright. My number 5 dungeon, which we also mentioned in the last episode, was...
Oh, wait. Let me see if I can think of it. No. Okay, go on.
Okay. The Forsaken Fortress from Wind Waker.
Oh, fuck. I should have known that because I thought about adding that one.
Yeah, you go to it twice.
Yes.
In the beginning of the game, you have to, like, sneak through. There are, like, these searchlights that you have to avoid, and you can't really be seen by any of these people that are trying to kill you.
Really different feel for a Zelda game.
Yeah,
like
it's
a stealth focus.
Completely different gameplay style, and it makes you feel, like, weak. I mean, like, all Zelda games, like, you start out with, like, you know, a wooden sword or something like that, where you're weak, and then eventually you get the Master Sword. But this one, like... the gameplay was different from, like, when you feel weak. It's not like it takes more hits to break something or whatever. It's that...
Well, and I was about to say, like, in other games, you may feel weak, but you still have a fucking sword that you can, like, kill things with.
Yeah, and this point in the game, you didn't have a sword. Or you
No,
got
you
it
were just kinda, like,
late
fucked.
on in the fortress.
And if you were caught, it was, like, a punishment that you got, like, thrown back into the dungeon.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then... later you go back to the Forsaken Fortress with your Master Sword and just kick ass, and it's, I don't know, it's pretty rewarding after you had to stealthily go through and avoid everybody, and then you start kicking butt.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
The only thing I don't like about that place is that it's a little confusing to navigate.
Yeah, it's a gigantic circle, and it's almost symmetrical, so it's hard to tell, like, where you are and where you have to go sometimes.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Casey, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is from a game that you haven't played. So, once again, let's see if I can make this sound appealing to you.
Okay.
The Sky Keep from Skyward Sword.
Okay.
It is one of the later half dungeons that you venture through in the game, and its main gimmick is that you literally have to rearrange the dungeon layout via a block slotting puzzle.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, like you start in a room, and there's this little like 9 tile block sliding puzzle, and you move the blocks, and each block corresponds to a room in the dungeon, and you slide them, you like move them around and switch them up so that they appear in that order when you explore the dungeon.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful because stuff like you can have a door that leads to nothing, so you can't go through that door, or you could have a door that leads to a room you didn't want to go in. So you have to like carefully think about where you place the rooms and where you ultimately want to end up and shit. And I was really impressed by that because, to my knowledge, the Skykeep is one of the very few dungeons that you physically manipulate.
Yeah, and like spatial awareness is super important.
Yeah, and map reading.
Yes, of
No one's
course.
gonna get that joke.
That's awesome, Casey.
Yeah, the other thing I like about it is that being one of the late game dungeons, it is a lot of its challenges are a culmination of many of your skills and your items and your experience. And the one thing I'll give Skyward Sword credit for is that it does make use of items more frequently than just in the dungeon they're found in or whatever.
Yeah.
And the Skykeep is a good example of that because you will use quite a few of your old items to traverse it.
Yeah. I think I have to play that game. I think it's
Yeah,
important.
I mean, I don't particularly like it, mind you, but I do think that it has some nice dungeons.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't like about the Skykeep, and this is why it's on number 5,
Okay.
it borrows way too heavily from the previous dungeons and areas in the game, both thematically and puzzle-wise. Like, pretty much every room in the dungeon is just like a copy-paste of an environment from a different part of Skyward Sword. And I get why it's like that, but it still strikes me as a little bit uncreative.
Yeah. Shout out to Mark Brown, who does this YouTube series called Boss Keys. And he goes over a whole bunch of the Zelda games, and he'll go over the dungeon design and the way it's laid out. And I guess a lot of what you were just saying is a lot of his complaints about some of the 3D Zelda games, that their dungeon design, like the order in which you have to do things, is very, very similar in most cases. So the ones that do break the mold are pretty awesome. So like this one that you said, you have to manipulate the rooms and then go back to them in order to complete the dungeon. That would be like an excellent use of spatial awareness and, I don't know, dungeon design, where most of them are like, there's like this central room, you have to go to the left, get a key, go to the right, do the thing, and then you go forward, and all of a sudden you're at the boss.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I don't personally have a problem with that old like standard for Zelda dungeons
Mm-hmm.
because, well, at least in some of my favorite Zelda games, they'll mix it up with like gimmicks and shit.
Yeah.
But I mean, I see what you mean. It's cool when there's an occasional dungeon that can sort of break the mold.
Yeah. Speaking of a dungeon that breaks the mold, my
Oh,
number.
by the way,
Yeah.
I severely hope your friend Mark Brown is going to plug us as well.
Of course.
Okay.
He's not my friend, and he's way bigger than us.
Of course he's not, and of course he is.
Yeah. So breaking the mold. Everybody doesn't like this temple.
Oh God, I already know what this is going to be.
Yeah, this is the water temple
I
from
don't get why
Ocarina of
people
Time.
don't like this temple. I really don't.
I think people don't like it because on the N64 version, you'd have to like press start, equip iron boots, and then press start again to get back into the game.
They don't like that. They should see the water temple from fucking Majora's Mask.
Yeah.
It's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, I do remember that one too. But this game, like, I guess also on the I've played the Water Temple on the N64, but more recently I played it on the 3DS.
Yes.
And the
yes.
3DS's controls are way better because you can equip the iron boots to your touch screen. So all you have to do is just touch them, and you can go from going up in the water to the surface to going down, which is really important. So the Water Temple is like super duper complex. It has like 3 different levels, and you can,
It's extremely vertical.
yeah,
Probably the most vertical dungeon in Ocarina of Time.
yeah, it's crazy vertical. And you can manipulate the water levels on each of those levels.
Yes,
Um,
that's right. Fuck that.
and speaking of like what you were just saying with your number 5, you have to really be aware of what's in what area and what moves whenever you move the water level.
Ah, yes, because there were blocks. They were like
Hmm.
floor panels that would float up with the water.
Yeah. So it like took young Austin forever to figure out the water temple. It was mostly just like,
Are we getting a bit existential here?
yeah. um, it was just hard to figure out as a kid, but then playing it when I was older, it made a lot more sense, and it was like way better for me. So
Yeah.
if you're not good at figuring out like where things are relative to where you are, the water temple is going to be a bad time. If you're just going in it like blindly going forward and trying to find the next thing, it's really not intuitive. You have to really think to get through this one.
I mean, because I don't have a good like memory of where things are per se.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in certain games I do, but not in that one. And
Yeah.
I still think the water temple is fun if you just run in blind, but I have more patience for looking around and shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing I don't like about the water temple, and it's not even the water temple's fault, it was just a fucking error on the part of the programmers, was the fucking song wouldn't raise and lower the water level for me unless my face was fucking making out with the sign.
Yeah, sometimes that happens in that game for some reason. I don't know why. Or
And it's
songs won't
especially bad when
register.
it happens to you on the first one, because then you're conditioned to think, oh, I guess that's not what I have to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
But that's not the temple's fault, that's just faulty programming.
Yeah. What's your number 4?
Well, my number 4, and this is going to be extremely awkward after what you said about what Mark Brown said about what are said about dungeons,
Okay.
because my number 4 is the Forest Temple from Twilight Princess.
I almost put that on my list.
What?
I
You.
almost did, but I didn't.
Okay. Honestly, I didn't think you'd remember anything about it.
I just remembered that you got the Gale boomerang and that there were monkeys and you had a whole bunch of like turning bridges that you'd
Yeah.
have to manipulate.
Well, and for the benefit of the readers, it's the first dungeon of Twilight Princess. It's the forest-themed dungeon, blah blah. Its primary gimmick is that you have to go free monkeys who are trapped in cages, and when you free them, they return the favor by essentially they'll like swing on ropes so that you can like grab onto their arms and swing off of them to reach like inaccessible areas before.
Yeah.
So so essentially you free them to open up other parts of the dungeon, and I really like that because it feels like I remember the first time playing that dungeon and just thinking that I'd never seen a Zelda game really have like a thematic gimmick like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're introduced to the monkeys a little bit before you go into the dungeon, and then suddenly you have to help them out, and they'll actually help you out as well. And it was just really like stunning to me that a game could, I don't know, open up that kind of interaction with NPCs for like a dungeon.
Yeah, just what you just said is why I remembered the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, your
and I mean, I
interaction
do,
with the monkeys is pretty cool.
yeah, and I mean, I do agree with you. I thought the Gale Boomerang was cool. The using it to like manipulate bridges with wind
Mm-hmm.
was cool. I just think it's an excellent first dungeon in general. I mean, it like features a lot of things that you'll be dealing with. It introduces bombs, the boomerang, manipulating wind puzzles. It's got a decent starting challenge for like newcomers in terms of like puzzle and combat.
Yeah.
Uh, I just think it's a good like introductory dungeon. Its biggest problems include the fact that it's a really fucking boringly designed forest dungeon in
Yeah.
terms of just like aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it is kind of the epitome of what Mark Brown apparently said, where it's center room, go left, get a key, go right, get another thing, go forward, repeat ad infinitum until you reach the boss.
Yeah. He did like a few aspects of this temple, if I remember correctly. Like, there's this one point apparently early on in the temple where you see those bridges that you can manipulate,
Yeah, and
and
but they're manipulated by wind, like outside wind.
yeah, and then after you get the item, then you're like, oh yeah, there's that one part.
I have the power of nature,
Yeah.
Captain Planet.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. That was a good pick, Casey.
Yeah. And oh, one other thing.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking love at the end of that dungeon where helping all those monkeys results in a culmination of them forming a long chain rope for you to swing on.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
It was a really nice, like, it was a good feeling reward.
Yeah. That's
But anyway,
fantastic. Oh, and isn't it like if you don't get all the monkeys, you can't reach them or something like that, but they're still making the chain?
yes, yes.
Okay. So then that lets you know that you have another monkey to get.
Yeah. And although I think it's pretty hard to miss any of them because they're kind of like the camera will point out that there's a monkey in a room.
Hmm. Okay. So my number three is the Wind Temple from Wind Waker.
I don't remember that temple.
Let me spring your memory.
Wow.
So there were these
Bring the memory, huh?
spring platforms.
Oh, oh my God, I'm done. Podcast is over. Goodbye. See ya.
that So you get iron boots in this temple before this temple, but what you can do is you find these platforms, and if you go put your iron boots on, it lowers the spring, and then you let your iron boots go off, and then you get shot forward, and then in the air you can use the Deku leaf to
Yeah.
glide into different areas. So yeah, I it's in the third position because of that one thing.
No, because that was a bit. I mean, you say like one thing, but that was like the core part of that dungeon, if I recall now.
Yeah, but it was so cool that you could use those two items in conjunction with one another to get an awesome effect.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That really is a neat, like a neat, just a neat effect. Yeah,
Yeah, there was like a lot of leaf action in the wind temple. Wind temple. I mean, like of course there was a bunch of like wind coming at you at times, and you'd have to control yourself, so you just put the iron boots on. But there was also that stuff that we were talking about with the leaf. Like this is a later temple in the game,
later
but
tempo.
you get the leaf earlier on in the game, right? So it was cool to see the leaf getting so much use later on in a later dungeon, where so often in Zelda games you get an item and then that's almost like the exclusive item that you'll use in the dungeon. But it was just neat to be able to use the leaf. And I think that this was the temple that had some platforms you could move by pushing air on the opposite direction you wanted to go to
Yeah.
propel
Oh,
yourself.
I thought the forest temple had that too.
Oh, okay. I'm sure it did. I could be making stuff up again.
Again, that's like the fifth time now.
Yeah, Casey.
But no, I totally get that. That is a real. I can't believe I forgot about that. That's really neat.
Yeah. Number three.
Number three is going to be yet again from a game you have not played yet. Skyward Sword, once again featuring the Sand Ship.
Okay.
It
Okay.
is like, yeah. Don't you love how I'm just spoiling the shit out ship for you?
No, it makes me more excited to play the game, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, and it makes me very sad to say this. I think you'll like it.
Okay.
I think you'll
If I
like
get
Skyward
past
Sword.
like that one character, like your Navi, whatever
Oh
that person
God.
is, that person
Why?
annoyed me in like the first 10 minutes of the game.
Oh my God, dude, you have not seen anything yet.
Great.
But I do think that Skyward Sword has some of the better dungeon slash item like usage in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like being able to use it for later on.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to dungeons. We're done with items, Austin. Move on.
Okay.
Okay, so the sand ship is like I believe it's the third dungeon that that's in Skyward Sword.
Okay.
And what it is it's an abandoned pirate ship that's been left in the middle of a barren desert-like area, and you essentially have to explore it. The primary mechanic is extremely inventive and really nicely realized. So there are these time stones scattered throughout the ship, right? They look like those Sheikah stones from Ocarina of Time. Remember, you would strike them and they go like boing.
Yeah, and they tell you the time or something.
Yeah, yeah. But in the sand ship, when you strike one of these stones, there's a certain area around the stone that reverts back in time. So you'll strike a stone, and the land around the stone, which in the present is like barren and decrepit, suddenly reverts back 100 years or whatever, and it's like fresh flowers and fields of bloom and all that.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, but what's really cool is that the time reversion, like the area of effect, is kind of limited. Like it might only cover like half a room. So
Okay.
you'll be in like an abandoned room with ruined everything, but then you strike a stone, and half of the room is suddenly like it was 100 years ago, alive and well.
Wow. That's like the opposite of Metroid Prime 2's like dark area zone.
Yeah, kinda. Well, and the neat thing is that you can also strike the stones again to revert it once again back to the present, where it's like an abandoned ship.
Hmm.
And what I like about this dungeon is they're like time stones are scattered throughout this ship. You essentially have to make the ship keep alternating between its present abandoned self and its past fully manned on the sea self to navigate it.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you'll be like stuck in a room and you got to aim an arrow out of a window that strikes a time stone, and then suddenly the room becomes like traversable.
Huh.
And then you exit the room and strike another time stone to revert things back to the present where you can manipulate it another way.
Yeah.
It was just a really, really cool mechanic.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to play that game, Casey.
Definitely one of the most fascinating things. And I mean, it's not the time stones aren't limited to the sand ship, but it's pretty much limited to the desert area, which is a real shame because I feel like that could have been a central theme of a Zelda game all of its own.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the idea of like exploring a ruined land and strike a stone and suddenly like portions of the land are 100 years in the past.
Yeah.
But anyway, reason why Sand Ship is number three is just because both the present and the past versions of the ship, when it's manned and unmanned and all that, are thematically boring. It's either a decrepit ship or just a regular pirate ship.
Okay.
Oh, and that's the one other thing. When you make the ship travel back in time to the past,
Mm-hmm.
whatever like crewmen were there originally come back to life.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Can you
Yeah, so
interact with them at all?
they're enemies.
Oh, okay.
So you'll be like running across like a group of like bare bones laying across the ground, strike a time stone, and suddenly they're all crewmen who are suddenly pissed with you.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
All right. My number 2 dungeon is the Stone Tower Temple from Majora's Mask.
Wow. Hey, guess what?
What?
That's one of my least favorite temples ever.
What?
I
Really?
hate that temple. I
I,
hate it.
I love this.
Oh.
So, okay, let me tell everybody why I liked it. So, this is a dungeon late in the game. It's after you get, like, so there are these 3 masks in Majora's Mask that change your form. Casey was mentioning one of them, the Goron mask, earlier.
The Deku mask and the Zora mask.
Yeah. So, in this temple, you have to utilize all 3 of the masks, where in the other temples, you'd only have to really use the mask that was assigned to that temple.
True.
And the coolest part about this dungeon is that the dungeon flips upside down.
That's the part I hate.
Oh, it's so cool because like your relationship to everything changes, and you have to do like some pretty outside the box thinking to figure out what you have to do next.
Yeah, I mean, no, it is cool conceptually,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a lot like that Skykeep thing where you have to manipulate the environment to
Yeah.
actually navigate it.
Yeah.
But my God, the fucking navigation through that damn temple.
Yeah, it's hard. I remember that this temple did take me a little while to beat. Like normally you can beat a Zelda dungeon in like 1 to 2 hours.
Yeah,
This one was probably like 3 hours for me.
and God help you if you were trying to find all those fairies.
Yeah, screw the fairies later on in the game. Like I obsessed over them in the first like 2 dungeons, and I got all of them, and then I was just like, it's not even worth it for the rest of them.
I mean, I will say that the reward you get for the Stone Tower fairies is probably the most gratifying of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was just, I just thought it was an awesome concept, and I think that you could even, on the outside of the dungeon, see that it was flipped. Is that right?
Yes, you could, which
Yeah,
was neat.
yeah. So, yeah, that's my number 2. Casey,
What?
what's your number 2?
My number two are the Goron Mines from Twilight Princess. Once again,
Okay.
it's the second dungeon in the game. It's it's fucking Goron dungeon from every fucking Zelda game. But it's a combination of like caves and mines. It's actually really well like realized and it's really intricate because you'll just you'll walk through like caves with molten lava, but suddenly you'll see like man-made handiwork, like platforms and mining equipment and shit.
Okay.
And I personally love it when they'll take like a natural world and sort of show it being developed upon by like society.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that makes for a really neat look to it, and that's what the Goron mines are for me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And one of the things I love most about this dungeon, and I don't think I mentioned this, but one of my follow-up favorite items was the iron boots, specifically because of Twilight Princess.
Yeah.
And the Goron mines are what reinvented the use of the iron boots. Because before Twilight Princess, iron boots were essentially just to weigh you down, either to allow you to walk through a windy area or to walk underwater.
Mm-hmm.
In the Goron mines, not only are the iron boots used to give yourself weight for like pressing down switches or taking on enemies that could send you flying full force or whatever,
Yeah.
they also allowed you to walk on the walls and the ceilings because of like magnetic flooring.
Yeah.
Like you could literally be with the iron boots, you could be walking along this stained glass flooring that was magnetic that allowed you to like travel along the ceilings, fight caterpillars on the ceilings, aim at holes that couldn't be reached from the ground and walk along walls and shit, you know?
Yeah, I do remember that. Was
Yeah, it
there
was.
ever a point where you had to like take them on and off to
Yes.
quickly? I seem to
Yes.
remember something like that.
There was a point where you had to literally jump so that so that you could like get inside the area of a magnetic field and then put on the boots so that you could be sucked up by the field.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I
And
like
that's
that
the
kind
other
of
thing.
stuff.
Like the boots were also used ingeniously for like shortcut travel throughout that dungeon because it's a lot more of a vertical dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
But there were like these cranes that had like the magnetic flooring on the end part of the crane that you could like walk under the crane and it would suddenly suck you up and you'd be on top of the crane and then it would like move you to a different part of the dungeon.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there's a mini boss. There's a mini boss that is really cool in that dungeon where you have to use the magnetic boots to stay on a giant platform that the enemy can make tilt into lava.
Oh, okay, I do remember that. That was pretty cool too.
Yeah. So all that combined with the gorgeous aesthetics and the feeling of the Goron mines is why it's my number two.
Yeah.
The only thing that weighs it down is that it's really no harder than the first dungeon,
Yeah.
which it shouldn't be, and it's not exactly original when it comes to its aesthetic. Comments, questions, concerns?
No, I do remember that one being a really cool dungeon.
Before you give your number one, what are some of your honorable mentions?
We already mentioned a lot of my honorable mentions, like your Forest Temple and Twilight. I did want to
Okay.
mention something else that almost made my list, which was just the Deku tree.
Dude, that was on my honorable.
In the beginning of Ocarina of Time, for two reasons. The part where you had to go up the Deku tree's trunk and then jump onto
And
the
jump down to way down that spider web.
yeah, that
Yeah.
it wasn't intuitive to me when I
Well,
was a kid, but like it almost like breaks game logic because
yeah.
yeah, I don't know, it was just a really cool moment because you don't think about that sort of thing a lot of times in games.
Yeah, no, it was like, well, because it was sort of like a use of real world physics, kind
Yeah,
of.
yeah,
But it was like, it's the kind of thing where it's like, you can do that?
yeah. I don't think that really much of any of the other part of the game does that kind of thing, other than like the Goron suit breaking shit.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But it was a really cool idea, and they kind of telegraphed it because once you get to the top, there's this platform that's like,
It's like a diving board. That you
it just points you in the direction. Jump off of this, you crazy mother trucker, and then then you fly down into this lower part of the dungeon, which I thought was also cool. That room that you fall down into, there's like water all around you, and you get these Deku sticks.
Yeah,
That
yeah, I do like the sticks a lot in that game.
yeah, that you have to light, and they're only lit for a certain amount of time, so you have to really plan out where you're gonna go with it, and you have to like burn spider webs and light torches with it.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, so that was
It,
my honorable mention.
you know what's freaky? Like, it's weird to think that that was one of the first themed dungeons in a Zelda game ever.
Yeah,
Like, because I mean, you look at like Link to the Past or any of the games before it, it's like, yeah, there's a dungeon in a mountain or whatever, but there's
Hmm.
nothing really about it that makes it feel like it's in a mountain as opposed to anywhere else.
Yeah.
But you go inside the Great Deku Tree, and it's like, oh my god, I'm in a giant fucking tree.
Yeah. And everything sort of, well, at least that first little area made sense, like anatomically, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it also like enemy layout, like they had spiders and like plants and shit. It all worked.
Yeah. All right, Casey. My number one dungeon for the Zelda series. I don't think a lot of people are gonna agree. Who knows? Maybe some people will, but it's burned in my memory. I'm
You
never
saw the
gonna
good.
forget this one. The Forest Temple from Ocarina of Time.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So like,
That's a cool one.
yeah, it's a cool one. I thought it had great music. I think
Yeah,
that Ocarina of Time, just in general, has great music. But
yeah.
they're like, okay, so there's a few gimmicks to this
There's
temple.
a. It's weird. I was just thinking. There's a lot of concepts in that dungeon.
Yeah, the main little central area, you have to, well, okay, so the main little central area has these four pose that there's a little cutscene when you walk in there. And these
Little
four,
ghost
yeah, yeah,
creatures.
these little ghost creatures like run off into different parts of the dungeon. You have to find them and kill them to light their perspective torch in the middle to unlock a different area. And they copied that same design in some other game, and it's
Twilight Princess, actually.
yeah, yeah, that's what I was thinking of. So that was pretty cool throwback to Ocarina, but there's also like these twisting corridors that you go through that changes like gravity. Well, it doesn't change gravity; it changes your orientation in the room or whatever.
See, that's another thing that would like rival falling through the spider web. Is just like, what the fuck is happening here?
Yeah, and then you can flip them, and your orientation obviously changes in the room, and there's some stuff that you couldn't do before. One thing that I do remember from it specifically is that it was really hard for me to navigate through it.
I remember playing that dungeon with you, and yeah, it was fucking like there's just certain spots where you're just like, where the fuck am I supposed to go?
Yeah, so it really makes you think. And who knows if it's making you think for a good reason for not, but I don't know. I just I spent a lot of my early years playing the Forest Temple and trying to figure it out, and like I was really proud of myself when I was able to beat it as a kid without a guide. Like all of my
Yeah.
friends had the guide to Ocarina of Time, and I didn't. So
It also featured a cool boss fight.
I don't remember what the boss was.
The Phantom Ganon who ran through paintings.
Oh, was it that one?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, that was an awesome boss.
And I mean, it introduced the bow and arrow, and
Mm-hmm.
it was the first dungeon that let you really try out the grappling hook.
Yeah, I do remember trying to figure out where to go next by what I could grapple hook next.
Yeah, oh, those fucking spiders, dude.
Yep. I do remember this one point that I don't like. There's like this gigantic wall with those spiders. And
Yep, I remember that. And
yeah.
like, you would clear them out, and then you'd start climbing, and suddenly you hear one, and it's like, oh, fuck me. And then the next thing you know, you're flat on your ass 100 feet below.
Yep. But yeah, it's just so memorable to me. It's like my iconic Zelda dungeon. So that's why it's my
Yeah.
number one.
Hey, guess what? I didn't predict any of yours.
Really? Wow. What'd you think that I would have that I didn't?
Honestly, I thought the dungeon that introduced the spinner, because
Oh,
you
okay.
spoke so highly about it.
Yeah, I don't remember much about that dungeon other than the spinner part and the
Yeah,
boss fight that included the spinner.
yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, just a quick note. Some of my honorable mentions include essentially the water temple for Twilight Princess.
Okay.
Because again, not only did it make use of the Zora suit, and the claw shot, but it also had a really cool like mechanic where you essentially made stairways spin like in Harry Potter
Mm-hmm.
to like redirect water flow and shit.
Oh,
Also,
yeah.
and
Oh, I forgot about that. That was one of my honorable mentions that I forgot to
Jesus.
mention.
Well, and I guess that makes sense because also I had the Great Deku Tree.
Yeah.
And similarly to the Great Deku Tree, I also really wanted to add Jabu Jabu
Oh, okay.
inside that giant fish.
Yeah, I hate that one.
It is annoying, especially the whole fucking carrying Ruto around like a fucking stone.
Mm-hmm.
But just conceptually, it's one of like the weirdest dungeons, especially at the time, because it's like, oh my god, I'm in the innards of a fish.
Yeah.
The walls are like moving because there is fucking like muscle lining.
Yeah, it had a good it did have a good theme, and like different rooms had different anatomical names to them.
Yeah, yeah, and like enemies, like jellyfish enemies, and like those weird looking like veiny tendril things.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, just wanted to give mention of them real quick.
Yeah.
My number one favorite dungeon in all of Twilight Princess is. Oops, I said which game it's from. Oh shit!
So this is your third Twilight Princess on your list.
Yes, it is.
Cool.
I think Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword have the best dungeons in all of Zelda franchise.
Yeah.
But
Cool. What is it,
my number
Casey?
one,
Give it to us, Casey. We're impatient now.
my number. By the way, did you hear? My number one dungeon is the Snow Peak Ruins from Twilight Princess.
Please refresh my memory.
It is the fourth dungeon. No, fifth dungeon. Sorry, it's the fifth dungeon. It is a ice world kind of dungeon, and we all know how much I like ice worlds.
Yeah.
And it is one of the most unorthodox dungeons, second only to stuff like Jabu Jabu and the Great Deku Tree, because what it is a ruined mansion inhabited by a Yeti couple.
Hmm.
It is like this giant, frozen over mansion that's partially run down, and it is inhabited by two loving Yetis, a boyfriend and girlfriend, or maybe husband and wife. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
And what's really cool about it is that this entire dungeon, and I was talking about this with the Forest Temple, how Twilight Princess dungeons tend to have like a thematic gimmick to them, like with the monkeys. The gimmick of the Snow Peak Ruins is that there's this quirky narrative where you're hunting for this special thing, but before you even think about like finding the special thing you need, you're trying to help the male Yeti find ingredients for a soup he's making to make his sick wife feel better.
Oh, that's right. I did forget about that. That's nice.
Yeah, like early in the dungeon, really early, you walk into a kitchen, a motherfucking kitchen, where the male Yeti is stirring this cauldron, and he's like, I'm making a special soup to make my wife feel better. She's feeling a little under the weather. And she's like, hey, can you do me a favor and like find me a pumpkin and a carrot and some other shit that I need for this excellent stew?
Mm-hmm.
And they're all located throughout the dungeon. So you have to walk around the dungeon, and then you get to these treasure chests, and they're in the like giant chests where usually like the boss key or the special item you're going to get is, right?
Yeah.
And you open the chest, and it's all like dramatic, and then you pull out a pumpkin, and it's like da 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 da. You know?
Yeah, yeah. It defies expectations.
Yeah,
For
and I
what
just
you'd
really
think
like
of.
how there's like a story to the dungeon essentially, and you can even like drink the soup to heal yourself.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and it's comedic and sweet at the same time, and it's just so like memorable because of how bizarre the circumstances around it are.
Yeah.
And another thing, I really like that dungeon because it's probably the first dungeon in the game that is actually more difficult.
Okay.
Part of it's just because you're walking on ice, of course, but also because the enemies are far more aggressive and have wider like attacks and all that.
Yeah. I do remember one thing about this dungeon.
Uh-huh.
There were cannons in this dungeon, weren't there?
Yes, there were. You could redirect them to take out enemies or blow through walls.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a way harder dungeon. Like that was probably my first dungeon where I legit died in Twilight Princess.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I remember you having, I don't think you died, but you had some pretty rough experience with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think I did.
And the other thing I like about it is that it introduced the ball and chain item, which is essentially Twilight Princess's equivalent of the hammer.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. That's awesome.
Yeah, you could like spin it around and like use it to hit enemies or like throw it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, overall, I don't know. I just that dungeon will always stick out in my mind just because of how quirky its narrative is, and just because of how just bizarre it is. It's like, I mean, like going inside a great tree and going inside a fish is bizarre, but there's just something about like I'm in this couple's house and I'm trying to help them with their chores essentially.
Yeah.
Even though I'm trying to save the world and like find this evil or find a piece of a mirror to help save the world. It's like, oh, I'm gonna help this. I'm gonna go get a carrot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've never cared for Zelda's story or anything really, but it's nice that they'd at least give you some side quests or side stories that you can engage with like this. And you don't it doesn't have to be like a, really complicated story. Zelda doesn't really talk. I mean,
No.
Zelda, I mean, like, God.
Yeah.
Noob
Oh,
mistake.
you just committed a sin?
I know.
Oh.
um,
40 great fairies for you.
oh. Um, yeah, but I don't know. I can appreciate why you like that. I don't think I really appreciated it on the same level that you did, but I can
Well,
definitely
I
see
just
why you did. Well, Casey, is there anything you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
yes. So shut your mouth. Good people. Good, beautiful people. Do you agree with our lists? What would be in yours? Got suggestions for top fives? Post it all down below. And stay tuned for the rest of Zelda Month as we celebrate the apparent third coming of Christ in the form of a game release. Next time on the 15th, bosses and characters. Doodles!
1, 2, 3, 4, 5!